Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the CrossWinds Church More Than Sunday podcast. Glad you're joining us as we kick off another week of these podcasts while we shelter in place. Cannot wait for the shelter in place experience to be over. But thanks for doing your part, keeping everybody safe and staying home. Today, we're doing something kind of special. We're talking a little bit about yesterday's sermon. I've got Josh Peine, who is our CrossWinds Kids Director, on with me, and we're talking about this idea of what it is to love each other as we have been loved by Jesus, rather than as we love ourselves. Enjoy this. I'm here with Josh Peine, who's our Children's Ministry Director, our CrossWinds Kids Director. Hey, Josh, welcome back.
Hello again. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being on the podcast. We thought it might be kind of fun just to talk a little bit about the series that we've started and this underlying premise of what it is to love people, not as you love yourself, but as the way Jesus loved you. And I guess I wanted to bring it up with Josh because he had shot me a text after the message yesterday just about that concept. And I think personally that could be kind of a revolutionary concept. I wish I could take credit for it. That's been out. It's Jesus. It was his thing.
But it's funny. It's funny how you can, like, I've been reading and listening to people talk about the Bible my entire life, and there's still stuff that somebody will say, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never thought about it that way before. That makes so much sense. And now those two passages connect. And if you think about it, like, loving people the way Jesus loves them is a way better idea than loving people as you love yourself, because I'm only good at loving myself like a fraction of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's funny is having grown up in church, I have kind of used those passages interchangeably.
Yeah.
Without taking a really hard look at them, I've just assumed that what it is to love your neighbor as yourself is the way that Jesus loved us. But if you really look at the life of Jesus, at no moment did you sense that his love for people came out of him looking at how he would want to be loved and doing it back.
And maybe that's the great ego in all of us, right? Where we're like, oh, these verses are exactly the same. The way Jesus loves me and the way I love me. Exactly the same. Yeah. So that's, they're vastly different, but I'm with you. Like, I've always heard them used either interchangeably or like, see, he said it again, and he didn't really say it that time.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think one of the things that we mentioned in the message yesterday, he is so deliberate about telling them, this is a new command I give you. And to me, having known that he had been referring to his whole ministry to love your neighbor as yourself as the greatest commandment, alongside love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength.
Right.
And then as we get to the end of his ministry, the end of his life, I think it was at the Last Supper, right? That he says, now I give you a new command to love one another as I have loved you. To me, that was like mind-blowing. Wait a second. This is really deliberate.
Yes.
That he is changing the command on them.
And Jesus did that all the time. Whenever I read about like the disciples' response to things, sometimes you go like, how did they miss like so many things? Like, they got to walk side by side with Jesus throughout his entire ministry. Like, how did they miss stuff? But they were always playing keep up, trying to keep up with what Jesus was doing, and Jesus just kept dropping different bomb after bomb after, like, I mean, just at the Last Supper, the whole washing the feet thing. He's like, this is the greatest thing I can do for you, and they're like, what?
Yeah. And of course, only Jesus can say this, right? Because who else in the world would say, love each other as I have loved you?
Right.
I mean, it takes a lot of guts to say something like that. And the knowledge that you have over the last 3 years shown them an incredibly different sort of love than they have ever seen anywhere before.
Yep. You have to know that your love is perfect, or that you fully embody love to be able to make that claim or statement.
Yeah. I think one of the things I find interesting about this, we've always heard of the golden rule. In Matthew 7, Jesus is talking, and he actually, says, so do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which is very similar to love your neighbor as you love yourself. You kind of get where those two are interchangeable in some ways. I got an email this week from Paul Gant. Paul was on our podcast, I think, a week or two ago, he and his wife Laura, who lead our medical team. And they were
people.
talking a little bit. They're awesome people, incredible people. And they were talking a little bit about these classes that they go and do through their company, these safety leadership classes that they do at different companies. They go in and teach these things. And he just wrote me, you point out the golden rule, as it's called, not being the way it's supposed to work in real life. And he says, treating somebody else the way you would want to be treated is actually in some ways kind of selfish. Like, what if they don't like what you like?
Right.
And so he just wrote, in our classes, we emphasize getting to know those that you lead first, as Jesus did. And then we say to treat them as they would want or need to be treated. And we call that the platinum rule. And that seems to align way more with how Jesus approached people. He gives us what we need because he knows who we are and what we need and what we want. What do you think, Josh, about this concept of having to get to know somebody first to know how it is that they need to be treated?
I think it actually, for me, it ties back actually into the 5 love languages, because I'm a big fan of that book and Chapman's work and all that. And I've done work with students and with children and with my wife and all of this fun stuff. It is such a more selfless approach to a relationship, right? I think a lot of times we look for those relationships that are 50-50, like I'm getting just as much out of this relationship as I'm putting in. And those for me have never lasted or have never been as deep as they could be, because I think a relationship is more like a balance beam, right? Like it's more, or a seesaw, whereas I have to recognize how much my counterpart in this can give. And if they can only give 20%, then me loving them is going 80, not going 50 and going, where you at? It's going the full 80. And so recognizing where your people are and knowing that it's always changing, to me, it keeps it fresh. There's not just one way to act and one way to treat people. Like, you have to adapt and make stuff up on the fly when you're engaging with people, because they might need a different love today than they needed yesterday. They might need different treatment today than they did last week. And that's what keeps relationships fresh and fun. And I don't know. Like, to me, it's a way better approach and a way more selfless it's not selfish. Whereas I think the other way is.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I love your seesaw analogy. I think that's actually really good. Did you say seesaw or teeter-totter?
I don't know. Seesaw, teeter-totter. Those are interchangeable. Yeah, I don't know.
No, I think
scales.
There's something to that.
Scales. This side up, down. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. I think the truth is there's something that happens in relationships where we look at each other, and I don't know about you. When I get into an argument with Andrea, or really anybody, at the core of the argument is, this is not how I would have done it, and this is not how I would have wanted to have been treated in this.
Yeah.
And why didn't you do it my way? Or why didn't you treat me the way that I want to be treated? Or for her, it's more likely that I'm the one who's done something wrong to her.
I say, how do those conversations go for you, Chris?
Yeah, right. Right. And so at the core of this concept of like, wait a second, it's not about me filtering through my own experience, like how would I want things to go, or how would I want to be spoken to or treated, but how do I need to speak to you based on who you are?
Yeah.
How do I need to treat you based on that? I think there's a real wisdom there behind what Jesus has said in all of it.
And I think it also set up, I think he waited until that time period or until that moment to drop that on them, because he knew the type of persecution and the attacks that were coming. He knew what they were going to be facing in the days where he wasn't around, and knew that the easiest way for them to, to approach those conversations would be out of self-interest, and how do I preserve my interest in this situation? Whereas, if they're just going at it as, it doesn't matter what they come at me with, it doesn't matter what I face, I've got to love them the way he just did, and he just kind of died for everybody. So, like, that's
Well, and that's a great point you make. I mean, right there, that as the days were getting harder for them, for Jesus to look at that and then know, hey, when it comes to the little things in life, loving others as you love yourself is probably a pretty great rule, right? The greatest so far. And yet, when things really get tough, when we talk about laying down your life for someone else, that's not as you love yourself. That becomes as I have loved you. The more conflict, the harder it gets in a relationship, the more you do have to move away from loving as you love yourself to loving as someone, as Jesus has loved us.
Right. Yeah, because it's funny. I actually didn't get a you kind of brought it up in your message the other day. I actually didn't get chosen for a youth pastor job because of my approach to something like this. They were asking a lot of theological questions. Where do you stand on this? Where do you stand on this? And I had answers for them. Like, I could have told them what I really thought, but
Yeah.
I decided to approach it in like, well, this is how I'm going to teach it. This is how I'm going to approach these subjects is, I think if Jesus were here and you asked him these same questions, I think his answer would be, it doesn't matter. Just go love people. Like, that would be his grand answer for everything. You know, what did you mean when you said this? Or what should I do in this situation? He'd say, it doesn't matter. Just go love people. That's it. And that would be, and they didn't like that, so I didn't get the job. But,
Well,
I think it's good wisdom.
Yeah, sometimes there's such a thing as being too honest, maybe? I don't know.
Or maybe they wanted me to actually have a stance, so it was easier for them to tell me no. I don't know. Yeah.
That might be. All right, man. Hey, thank you for coming on and talking about this with us. It's always good to sometimes have a day after reflection and just to think about it together. So we appreciate it. In the meantime, while we've got you here, how you holding up? How's this thing treating you? Yeah.
Good. I'm getting into a groove. I think I'm finding a rhythm in all of this, which is nice. Yeah. It's not my preferred method. Like, again, the fun part about doing children's ministry is being with kids. Like, you know, you can plan and do a bunch of creative things, but if you don't get to see their response or them interacting with it, like, it kind of takes some of the fun out of it. But we've got some pretty cool ideas that we're hoping to roll out here in the next month that'll change things up a little bit. So
cool.
I'm excited about that. So yeah, we're doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. We're doing okay. I'm enjoying my extended time with my family. There's a lot of stuff we're getting a chance to kind of do together around the house, and games we're playing, and bike rides we're taking, and walks we're going on. So that's been good. It's certainly going to be weird when this is all over, right? To go back to life as normal. It's going to be
I think there's going to be quite the adjustment period. But it's going to be it's going to be weird to see how everybody responds to coming out of this thing.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks for listening today, Josh. Thanks for doing this with you. We'll see you again.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Bye.